So, you're thinking about getting married in Colombia. Whether you're both Colombian, both foreign, or one of each, the good news is this. The process here is clear, inclusive, and internationally recognized. In Colombia, well, it gives you everything from intimate notary weddings to large ceremonies full of tradition, plus some of the most spectacular backdrops you could imagine. In this complete guide, updated for 2025, we're going to walk step by step through types of marriage in Colombia and cultural aspects, common law union, same-sex marriage, requirements and setting the date for civil marriage, prenuptial agreements and their international reach, cost of civil marriage in 2025, marrying a foreigner, registering a marriage celebrated abroad, M-type marriage visa, common law union in detail. Let's get started. In Colombia, there are two main legal paths to formalize a marital union with civil validity: civil marriage or religious marriage with civil effect. Both have the same legal value, as long as they're properly registered. The civil marriage. This is performed before a notary or a civil judge. It's simple, quick, and fully legal. Who can marry civilly? Any couple, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. Why is civil marriage the most common choice? When one of the spouses is foreign, when you want something practical and intimate, when legal certainty and speed are priorities. With the right documents, it can be a very fast process. The religious marriage with civil effect. Many couples in Colombia dream of a religious wedding, especially Catholic, because of a deep cultural tradition. And here is the interesting part. A Catholic marriage and ceremonies from certain recognized churches can have exactly the same civil effects as a civil marriage. But there is one key condition. You must register the religious certificate in the civil registry, either at a notary or the National Civil Registry Office. If your church is recognized and you register the marriage, it's legally equivalent to a civil wedding. If not, or if you fail to register, the marriage will have no legal validity until you go through a civil or notarial process. Cultural note: in Colombia, it's common to have a religious ceremony followed by a big family celebration. But legally, it's the registration that gives you the rights as a spouse. Now, not every couple in Colombia chooses to get married. Some live together permanently but don't want to, or maybe can't, go through a formal wedding. That's where the common law union, or Unión Marital de Hecho, comes in. Technically, it's not a marriage, but when you declare it, you get very similar rights in property, in social security, and even in inheritance. Here's how it works. If you and your partner live together, you can go to a notary or a judge, make that declaration, and be officially recognized as permanent partners under Colombian law. And we will break this down in detail later, because it's also something that can open the door to a visa for a foreign partner. Let's talk about something important. Since 2016, same-sex couples in Colombia have had exactly the same right to marry as any other couple. And when I say exactly the same, I mean it. Same guarantees, same legal effects, no extra requirement. You can have a civil wedding, or if you prefer, a religious ceremony in a congregation that performs LGBT marriages. And just like heterosexual couples, you can also declare a common law union with full legal validity. This right comes from rulings of the Constitutional Court, and it makes Colombia one of the pioneers in Latin America in recognizing and protecting these marriages. It's one of the reasons Colombia is considered a very LGBT-friendly country for couples who want to formalize their relationship here. Now, let's move on to the practical side, which is the documents you will need for a civil wedding. Most civil marriages in Colombia are carried out in notary offices, and the process can be pretty quick, as long as you have the paperwork in order. For Colombian citizens, here's what you need. A recent copy of your civil birth certificate, issued within the last 3 months. Your national ID card, the Cédula de Ciudadanía. If you've been married before, the divorce registration or the death certificate of your former spouse, and the marriage application before the notary, stating there are no legal impediments to marry. If one or both of you are foreigners, there's a bit more to it. A valid passport with a legal entry stamp, or your foreigner ID card, your civil birth certificate, issued within the last 90 days, and apostille or legalized, plus translated into Spanish if needed. A certificate of singleness or a sworn declaration, also apostille, legalized, and translated if applicable. If divorced or widowed, the relevant divorce or death certificates. 2 adult witnesses, not close relatives, with their IDs. A sworn statement at the notary, and official translations for all foreign language documents. And here's an important note. If the foreign spouse doesn't speak Spanish, an official translator is required for the ceremony. One more tip. Requirements can vary slightly from one notary to another, so always confirm directly with the office where you plan to marry, especially for foreign documents, since getting an apostille or translation can take time. So, once you've got your documents ready and the notary has reviewed them, the next step is simple. You set the date. If everything is in order, they'll coordinate with you to choose a day and time for your ceremony. In larger cities, there might be a short waiting list, sometimes a few days, sometimes a couple of weeks. So submitting your paperwork early is the best way to avoid delays. You can have the ceremony right there in the notary's office, or if you prefer something more personal, you can request an off-site location for an additional fee. On the big day, both of you plus your 2 witnesses need to be present with your original IDs. The notary will read the public marriage deed, ask for your consent, and once you've signed, they will register the marriage in the civil registry. From that moment, it's official, and you can request certified copies of your marriage record whenever you need them. Now, let's talk about something that's not as romantic as flowers and music, but is just as important if you want to avoid headaches later. Prenuptial agreements, or Capitulaciones matrimoniales, as we call them in Colombia. A prenuptial agreement is simply a contract you sign before the marriage to define exactly how the assets you currently have and the ones you will acquire in the future will be managed and divided. Here's the thing. In Colombia, if you don't sign one, the law automatically creates what's called a marital partnership or sociedad conyugal. That means everything acquired during the marriage will belong equally to both spouses, no matter who paid for it. And in the case of divorce, it's divided in half. That's why having a prenuptial can be useful. It helps avoid confusion, disputes, or even legal battles when it comes to managing or dividing property. You have a couple of options here. Total exclusion of assets. No marital partnership is formed at all, and each spouse keeps full control of their own property, both before and during the marriage. Partial exclusion. Certain assets are excluded from the marital partnership, while others are shared and managed jointly. When and how do you make them? They must always be signed before the wedding and before a notary as a public deed. The document will detail the agreed economic regime, how assets and debts will be handled, and any other financial conditions you agree on. And here's a critical detail. Once you're married, you can't sign a prenuptial agreement anymore. If you want to make changes later, you'll have to use other legal mechanisms allowed by law to modify the property regime after marriage. Legal validity in Colombia: if done properly before a notary, prenuptial agreements are 100% valid and enforceable here. If you divorce or one spouse passes away, the authorities will follow what's written in the agreement when dividing assets. And internationally, this is where you have to be careful. Every country has its own laws about recognizing prenuptial agreements signed abroad. A Colombian agreement may not automatically be recognized in another country. You might need to legalize it there and even sign a new one under that country's laws. If you plan to live in or own property in more than one country, the safest approach is to sign equivalent agreements in each jurisdiction. One last note: if a couple with a Colombian prenuptial agreement divorces in another country, the local judge might apply their own law instead of respecting the Colombian agreement if there is a legal conflict. That's why it's essential to get international legal advice if you want the agreement to be respected abroad. And yes, you can modify things after the marriage, but they're no longer called prenuptial agreements. And you will have to do it by public deed before a notary using the specific legal processes for changing the marital property regime. Alright, let's talk money, because everyone wants to know, how much is this going to cost? The good news is that getting married civilly in Colombia is generally simple, fast, and compared to many other countries, surprisingly affordable. Most civil ceremonies are held at notary offices, but you can also request an off-site location if you want something more personal. For 2025, these are the official rates based on Notary Office 19 of Bogota. At the Notary, 61,600 Colombian pesos. At home or any off-site location, 166,300 pesos. These amounts are set according to the resolution that adjusts fees based on the 2024 Consumer Price Index, and they apply nationwide starting February 1st, 2025. Additional costs for foreigners. You will also need to budget for apostilles, official translations, and in some cases, the travel expenses of an official translator for the ceremony. Now, what if one of you is Colombian and the other is from another country? The process is practically the same as for two Colombians, but there are a few extra details you need to keep in mind. All foreign documents, like birth certificates, certificates of singleness, divorce decrees, must be apostilled or legalized in the country of origin and officially translated into Spanish if they're in another language. The foreign spouse must be in Colombia legally at the time of the marriage. Some notaries even ask for a certificate of migration movements to confirm legal entry. It's always a good idea to choose a notary in a larger city that's used to handling marriages with foreigners. And here's an important one. Names will appear exactly as they do on the original documents, so double check spellings, accents, and other before submitting them. It can save you problems later. But what if you're already tied the knot in another country? Maybe you got married in your home country or during a destination wedding abroad, and now you need that marriage to be legally recognized in Colombia. Here's the deal. Colombian law recognizes civil marriages celebrated abroad, but for them to have legal effects here, you must register them through a process called protocolization or registration of a foreign marriage. You will need the marriage certificate or license, recent, less than 3 months old, apostille or legalized and translated into Spanish if necessary, civil birth certificates of both spouses, identification documents, Colombian with ID card, foreigner with valid passport, an entry stamp if the process is done in Colombia. Optional but recommended. Authenticated copy of any prenuptial agreements and birth certificates of any children in common. Also, apostilled and translated if issued abroad. Once you have this, the Notary or Civil Registry Office will record the marriage in the Colombian Civil Registry. That means it will be noted in the Colombian spouse's birth record, and an official marriage record will exist in the National Archives. Once it's registered, your civil status is officially married in Colombia, and that's essential for certain procedures like adding your spouse to your health insurance, inheritance processes, or buying property together. And now, for couples where one spouse is foreign, let's connect marriage with immigration, the M-type spouse visa. When a Colombian marries a foreigner, the foreign spouse can apply for this visa, which allows you to live, work toward permanent residency in Colombia. Benefits. You can live in Colombia legally. You can work without restrictions, as an employee, self-employed, or running your own business. You can join the healthcare system, and you start counting the years toward permanent residency. Key facts. Validity. Up to 3 years per issuance. Renewal. Unlimited as long as the marriage remains valid. Permanent residency. Possible after 5 continuous years with this visa. The process is 100% online, and you can apply from anywhere in the world. But there is something you should know. If the marriage ends in divorce, or if the Colombian spouse passes away, the visa's legal basis disappears, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will cancel it. That means you will need to apply for a different visa or leave the country before your status becomes irregular. Finally, let's go deeper into the common law union, because we touched on it earlier, but it's worth explaining it in full. A Unión Marital de Hecho can be declared before a notary, judge, or conciliation center. There is no minimum cohabitation time required to declare it, and you can do it from day one if you want. But property rights are presumed to start after 2 years of living together. Declaring a common law union gives you equal division of property acquired during the cohabitation, social security and pension rights, including access to survivor's pension, inheritance rights. The permanent partner is a compulsory heir under Colombian law. Costs usually range between 300,000 and 500,000 Colombian pesos, depending on notary fees, the cost of authentic copies, and whether you need apostilles or translations for foreign documents. So, Whether you choose a civil wedding, a religious ceremony, or a common law union, Colombia gives you clear, inclusive, and internationally recognized ways to make your relationship official. And if one spouse is foreign, your marriage or union could also be the first step toward building a life together here with full legal security. At Nexo Legal, we guide you through every single step, from reviewing and preparing documents to managing notary and register procedures to applying for the right visa. That way, you can focus on what really matters, celebrating your union and building your future together in Colombia. If you found this guide helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our featured videos. And if you have any specific questions about your specific case, drop them in the comments. We read them and respond to all of them. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.